so many things standing against him, not only physically, but emotionally. You know, it just spoke to my heart. I was like, this is a message for today, man, in our area. You know, and it's great to have someone that's from the local area that, you know, he's a 1985 football collegiate Hall of Fame, and was noted as the best kicker of the nation in his college days. And to see some of the statistics on the distance and the averages of his punts and kicks, well, it's just jaw-dropping, honestly. And to understand that he was born with a club foot. I mean, that isn't a challenge enough. He has been through a lot of painful experiences to overcome, and God has brought him to this place of influence so that he can share his story and his journey with us here today. So if you would you please give it up for Mr. Lewis Colbert.
It's moving to see what we can do when we really come together and really try to make a difference in this world, which is my main reason for this book. Now, I was a lot younger then. It's interesting to go back and reminisce and see the things that were accomplished. And I can honestly say at the time that I was going through all of that, it wasn't something I kept up with. It was really something that I had to do. I didn't really have a choice. My story is not unique to a lot of people. There's a lot of people in this world that's going through adversities and challenges. I will say that mine is very different. And it's a story that took me over 26 years to tell. It's a story that I wouldn't entertain. It's a situation that I was halfway through Auburn before anybody even figured out that I had a club foot. I did my best to hide it. And actually, I did a very good job. Probably more than I should have in retrospect. But you know, my story is about facing the challenges. It's overcoming adversities, the challenge mentally and physically, determination, desire, mental toughness. My book was, the foreword was written by my coach, Pat Dye. And when I had a chance to sit down and talk to him about doing the book and doing the foreword, some of the things he said that just make you sit back and think is like, wow, is that really me? But mental toughness was one of the things that he talked about. But most importantly, this story has more divine intervention than I realized during my time playing sports. There's at least 26 to 30 different scenarios that are in this book over the years of my athletic career that if they're not divine intervention, I don't know what is. You know, my story starts a long time ago. My mother and my father, they started at very early ages in the cotton mill right down here in Columbus, Georgia. I'm originally from Smith Station, Alabama. So I'm not far from here, so I am pretty close to being a hometown guy. But back in 1963, August, is when things really started to become challenging, and it really started some tensions, if you will, in the family. My mother and father had two other sons, Melton and David, and the closest one to me was 15 years older than I was. Needless to say that I wasn't planned, I was a surprise. So it started tensions before I was really even born, but my mother was going into labor. She goes and finds my father, tells him it's time to go to the hospital. The first thing he says to her is, well, why don't you drive yourself? Well, after a little conversation, a little time passed, but obviously everyone's in a hurry, right? He concedes and he drives my mom to the hospital, but only to drop her off at the front door. He didn't return for 4 days. About 1:30 in the morning, August 23rd, which is my birthday, I was born. Immediately, I was taken out of the room, taken to another room in the hospital. My mother recalls the look on the doctors' faces and the nurses, and immediately she figures out that something's wrong. He returns a short while later, and you can only imagine the words, or how my mother felt with the words that the doctor said, is that your son has been born with club feet. One of them's not so bad. I think we can handle it with braces and cast. But the other one is one of the worst I've ever seen. I really don't think he'll ever walk again, or ever walk. He gave my mom a 10% chance that I'd ever walk, and if I did walk, it would be with a severe limp or some aid to be able to walk. When I was born, my right leg stopped at the ankle. It was twisted 90 degrees, practically folded in half, twisted backwards, and matted against the back of my shin, and some parts of it growing into my calf, where my calf muscle would be. To this day, from the knee down, my leg is about half the size of the right. My right foot is almost 2 sizes smaller than my left. That was a very difficult thing for my mother to hear, and it started some very difficult tensions. 3 days later, I underwent the first surgery of many for the first 5 years of my life. They had to break my ankle or my foot in 3 different places. They cut my leg from the back of my knee all the way to my heel, and from the bottom of my heel all the way to up under my toes. And that was just to turn the foot around the first time. On the 4th day, my father returned. Came into the hospital, talked to my mom. My mom informed him of what had happened and what we were going through. His next comment was, well, Lois won't be coming home with us. At the age of 5, my father died. And it's remarkable to sit here tonight and look at the things that this group is doing, these young men. Wished I'd have had that opportunity growing up. My mother remarried once. It lasted for 30 days. That man threatened to hit me. That ended it. My mother never remarried again. My brother tried to fill the father role, and he did a very good job. He got me involved in the outdoors. Basically, he was fathers in the field, and my brother fishing, hunting, you name it. Kept me out of trouble. Sorry if I struggle at times with this. It gets a little better each time I do the speech, but sometimes it's still, it's tough to talk about. Like I said, I ended up growing up without a father. It was very difficult because I didn't have a whole lot of guidance. My mom was working all day, sometimes 2 shifts. I basically raised myself. At the age of 5, I went through my last surgery of 4 major operations. Since then, I haven't had any more surgeries. But those first 5 years was nothing but pain. Sometimes very difficult situations in the house. Cast both legs up to the hip. We tried to count it up, but I think basically the first 5 years I may have been out of a cast or a brace for 6 months. That was it. It was surgeries every 14 months, pretty much. As I grew older, I started looking for things to do. I was always outside. I wasn't an inside person. I have the brace here with me. It'll be out there at the table afterwards. I learned to walk with the brace. At around the age of 10, I started getting into baseball. And, oh Lord, how I love baseball. That was my first love. It still was my love, even through football. But it was a challenge, because I couldn't run. Tyrone and I were talking about good wheels when you're playing sports, and I was missing one. If I had a nickel for every time I turned my ankle, spin it in a soft cast or on crushers, ace bandages, it's remarkable that I am even here today to be speaking in front of you and talking about something that I accomplished. But obviously I didn't accomplish it by myself. It's by the grace of God. I played baseball for a number of years. I thought that that was my way out to a better life, to a higher education. I was actually pretty good at baseball. I was looking at scholarships. In high school, growing up playing baseball, I played on 6 different state championship teams. I played on 2. Made it to the World Series in the Dixie Majors twice, and we won it once. I was a pitcher throwing at 91 miles an hour in high school. Everything was great. I had to play baseball differently because when I run bases turning to the left, my right leg wouldn't hold up. I had to touch the bases with my left, and anybody that plays baseball knows that's not typically the way that you do it. I thought that was going to be my life. But I wanted to play football just like all of my friends. So I went out, 8th grade. Didn't make it, had to quit. Ended on crutches. 9th grade, repeat. 10th grade, longest I ever survived, 2 weeks. This time I planted Tyrone can understand this as good as anybody. I planted to cover a receiver, and my ankle popped. People could hear it on the sideline. It's probably the biggest pain I've ever been in. So they carted me off, took me to the doctor. Luckily, I didn't tear anything significantly. I didn't break anything. But it ended with a soft cast again and crutches, and I spent 2 months on the crutches. And at that time, I said, you know what? I got to give it up. It's not going to work. Hardest thing I ever did. I don't think I've ever given up on anything, ever. And to tell my coach that I've got to give up football was painful. But I still wanted to be part of the team. So I asked him, could I be a manager? So my 10th grade year, my 11th grade year, I was a manager for the Glenwood Gators in Phoenix City, Alabama. After leaving Smith Station, moving to Phoenix City because my mom had to move closer to work. And I spent those 2 years carrying chin traps, water bottles, and blocking dummies. But I was part of the team. But I knew I had my baseball. So we go into during that 2 years, I start picking up a football. Just by happenstance. Just because I was waiting for guys to come on the field, real football players that hit heads. I started picking up a football just for passing time. By the time my senior year rolled around, I had a couple of my friends there saying, you know, why don't you just ask the coach if you can punt? You know, you're getting kind of good at that. You're already punting it further than a first-string punter. Of course, the doctors didn't like that idea either, because the whole time they always told me that if I ever broke it, it might not heal. That's a scary thing for a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid. But I was determined. So I went and talked to him and asked him. I thought I had a chance, thought I had a way in. My heart began to sink because he goes, you know, that's just not normally or typical of what we do. And I'll never forget it. His comment to me that somebody as determined as you to be part of this team, we're going to give it a try. And I can honestly say that I felt like the good Lord told him right in the middle of his sentence, it changed his mind from no to yes. It was remarkable if you could have been there and seen it, and the change in him from when he started talking to he finished. So I played my senior year of football as a punter. My only football playing days in high school. I ended up making all-by-city and all-state. Averaged almost 43 yards a punt and over 40 yards net. But baseball season's coming up. I knew it. I already had scholarship offers. I was ready to go. My high school won 9 state championships out of the last 11 years. We had a remarkable baseball program. And my coaches were remarkable. They were my father figures. They were the people that made a difference in my life. I had a chance to talk to some of those in the last couple of years working on the book. We start off the baseball season. Things are going well. We're headed that way again. We're getting late in the season. We start into the the playoffs for the state championship. We're 3 games out. It's looking good. Double elimination, we haven't lost a game. And I'm pitching that game, and the rotation is, if we win this game, I'm going to be pitching the state championship my senior year. What a way to go out. Top of the 6th inning. I reared back, I threw a ball high and tight. Knew the guy to chase it. When I threw it, my arm popped. And down I went. I finished the game, but it was painful. I pitched that last inning because I wasn't going to walk away. They told me I'd torn my rotator cuff. And that's something you don't want to hear if you're a pitcher, that's for sure. I'm 1 game away. I thought my athletic careers were over. I still pitched that state championship game, and we won 1-0. But I don't think I could pick up my arm for the next 3 weeks. I never played baseball again. The irony of that story is that 3 years ago I took a fall off a horse and I tore every ligament and tendon in my right shoulder. And I had surgery to repair it. I'm laying up in the recovery room. The doctor comes in. First thing he says to me, he goes, "Have you ever hurt that shoulder before?" Yeah, I did. Tore my rotator cuff, pitching the state championship game. He goes, "No, your rotator cuff's fine. There's nothing wrong with your rotator cuff at all." My wife can vouch for this. I sit straight up in the recovery bed and I said, "Excuse me?" "No, your rotator cuff's fine." He said, "You tore a burster sac and it had flipped inside out. I just took and stitched it right back up. You're good as new." It's kind of what I said. Wow. I said, "Doc, you don't even know what you just told me." Because obviously he didn't know my story. After my senior year, I just said, you know what, I'm going to get my education. So Auburn was only 30 miles up the road. I took and borrowed every bit of the money I could find, grants, you name it. And I went to orientation for Auburn University. I was going to still go to school some way or another. So I'm sitting in the auditorium. It was middle of July. There must have been 400 or 500 people in there. I've never been to Auburn before. Lady standing down front just like I am right now, and she goes, "There's Louis Colbert in here." Raised my hand, come down there to see what she wants. She had a note for me. I'm walking back up the steps and I'm opening it up and I almost tripped and fell down. The note said, "Coach Dye wants to see you in the Coliseum." Wow. I only played 1 year of high school football. I was not recruited. Not a single college ever talked to me. But now Coach Dye wants to talk to me. And you know, sometimes the people that you meet and the people that you come in contact, you just never know what can happen. You just never know what life you touch or what, your life getting touched. But out of the irony of a family reunion, someone made a comment to Ray Scott, the founder of Bassmasters, who knew Pat Dye, who got my story all mixed up. But I still went down there and I talked to him, got the story straightened out. I wasn't 10 foot tall. I couldn't outrun Tyrone. And I couldn't punt a football 100 yards. But he offered me a chance to walk over. Of course, why not? Sounds good. I proceeded to the equipment room. I'm standing there. There's a guy in front of me. The guy quits. And I see him hand his jersey to the equipment guy, and it's number 5. That was my high school number 5. Now, what are the chances that one day, getting called to the auditorium, guy quitting in front of me, and him having my number? And if there wasn't somebody leading me through all of this, I'm not standing here. Because I'm just telling you the highlights. There is a lot of stuff in here that we really don't. I can stand here and tell you. We'd be here for a while. But I walked on Auburn University fall of 1981. I was probably 5'8", 165 pounds. I walk out to the first practice, and there was 17 punters and kickers out there. And I can honestly say I was probably the smallest. Not to mention I've got a physical handicap that nobody needs to know about, right? I do things like wearing 3 pair of socks on my right leg, make it look the same size as my other one. Before or after practices, I stayed dressed until everybody was gone before I took showers because I didn't want anybody asking me why your right leg was different than your left. After that practice or that initial day on the field, it was time to do our physical testing, maxing out for leg press, bench press, the 40. I can only say that this coach laughed at me. He giggled on my bench press and my leg press. I'd never lifted weights before. When I left Auburn, I was bench pressing over 300 pounds and leg pressing over 1,000. Those 4 or 5 years at Auburn were the best years of my life. It changed my life forever. It was a place that I wasn't supposed to be. And who would have ever known from the ages up to 5 years old, the amount of surgeries and the condition of my right leg, that I'd ever be the first 4-year starter, the first All-American punter for Auburn University. Led the nation my senior year up till the last 2 games of the year. Voted to the team of the century the first 100 years of Auburn football. Drafted in the NFL in the 8th round, first punter taken in 1986. You know, there's a lot of scars that I dealt with for a long time. You know, scars mentally, physically. You know, they remind me of where I've been. They remind me of the things that I had to deal with, had to overcome. But I never let them define me. What defines you is your faith, the people you know, how you act day in and day out in the life you live. And I did my best to make sure that any one day that somebody put something on me up there on the overhead projector, that I would never have to be embarrassed about it, that I could hold my head high. and say I gave it the best I could. Me and the good Lord's had a lot of conversations over the years. And during that time I was growing up, the biggest question I asked was, why me? What did I ever do to deserve this? 45 years later, I figured it out. He gave me a gift that nobody else had. Something different. Something hard that I had to work hard at. But you know what? He gave me everything I needed. And it made a difference. And that's my goal with the book, is to hopefully make a difference. And I know that it is making a difference, and it really makes me feel good, because there for a long time I didn't realize how much of this I had pent up, what kind of person it was making me. I grew up angry for a long time. I'm not angry anymore. And it feels good. It really does. I'm not perfect by no stretch of imagination. But I can honestly say that it took me a long time to realize that I had a special gift to share with the world, and that's what I want to do. So many times during these years, doors closed, but there seemed to always be a window that was opening somewhere. Hurt my shoulder, played football. Didn't really want to play football, but played football. And it wound up changing my life forever. I just want to close by saying, I'm so grateful for everything that's transpired. It comes with determination. It comes with the mental toughness. It comes with faith, hard work, refusal to give up. But life is difficult in the best of circumstances. These things that we face is just obstacles that we need to find a way to get over them and to make a difference. I ended this in my book, and it's something that I've lived by for a long time. There's a greatness all around us. The world is a place of wide wonder if you just open your eyes and your heart to it. Believe in yourself, for no one else will. And no matter what else, keep your faith in God and your head and your heart in the right direction, and you'll never have to worry about your feet. You can never quit reaching for your dreams. You can never give up. Thank you, and may God bless every one of you. I really appreciate getting a chance to come here tonight and tell the story. It's actually a very hard story for me to tell, but the more that I come to peace with it, and the more that God's helping me, the better I am by getting about it. But I wouldn't have been here if it wouldn't have been for that evening, that night, that I met James at the Coweta Christmas. James, where are you? He left. That's not good. Could somebody call him in? There he is. Like I was saying, James, I was telling him how appreciative I was being able to come here tonight and tell my story, and that I would not have had that opportunity had I not met you at the Coweta Christmas. For that opportunity and a chance to meet you and everything that has taken place, I want to give this to you. I inscribe it to James. Thank you so much for your support and work making this dream come true. You're a special man of God. Best wishes and God bless.